On this episode of Left Off the Map, we're joined again by Australian and Tasmanian cricket icon George Bailey at Barnbougle with owner Richard Sadler. Then we're off to Talia Haven for a salmon and celeriac dip. But first, we're at that same location using celeriac dip to create a celeriac soup. There's really simple ways to make soups that are often overlooked. Most people will put things into a pot and they'll cook it out in a pot with some water, or they'll put it into the oven and roast it and then blitz it. You can steam the ingredients that you want to turn into a soup, and I find it's a really good way of keeping lots of flavour in the ingredient that you're cooking. So this is a celeriac, and I want to make a celeriac and leek soup. So I'm going to steam my celeriac and my leek. What it means is the temperature never gets really above 100 degrees in the steamer. So we gently cook our leek. We don't get any colour, so we end up with a nice white soup. If you use a white stock, I'm going to use a brown stock, so it's going to colour it just a little bit, but it basically means you get the pure flavour of the vegetable. You don't get any caramelisation or maillard on the vegetable. So now I've got my celeriac all nice and peeled. Just want to dice it, and then I'll pop it into our steaming tray. Into chunks about the size of a dice is what we're looking for, so that it will cook uniform and reasonably quick. You don't want to keep it too big, otherwise it's going to take way too long to cook if you're steaming it. It's about the size of a dice. My lid off my steamer, pop that in. So my celeriac will go in there. I'm then just going to chop the white part of my leek, just finely slice that and do the same thing, pop that in, and we'll steam that through. When both of those things are soft, we can start to make our soup. My celeriac and leek has been in its steaming basket for probably close to half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour. So you just want to check that it's done by popping a knife in, and it should be nice and tender, that the knife will go in easily. So that way you know that when the blade from your stick blender is spinning around, it's going to be able to break it up quite simply. All right, so that is done. So with that, I'm going to now pour it back into the pot with a little bit of water left in the pot, but cream and the stock that I've made. So I've got here a gelatin stock that I always have on hand in my fridge. So I've taken chicken bones, just roasted them off, popped them into a pot of water, boiled that down, then strained the bones, taken it out and reduced it until I get to the flavour that I want. And then just put this in containers and it turns into gelatin. You just scoop it into things when you need to add stock. All right. Take my steaming basket off. Get rid of my boiling water. I'll keep a little bit of that just because that water's been passing through the leek and the celeriac, so it's got a good flavour to it. I'll pop my leek and celeriac in on top of that water. I've got a clove of garlic in there as well. Put that in. Then some cream. About a cup of cream. And then my stock. About 2 tablespoons of my stock. I'll let that get back up to temperature so that stock melts, and then we'll be able to blitz everything. I'll give that a taste. Just needs a little pinch of salt. Oh man, it's good. That is fantastic. All right, a couple of ladles into a bowl. And I just want to finish with a little drizzle of truffle oil. Truffle and celeriac is a really good combination. My truffle oil, drizzle that. And some chervil on top, and that is done. There we go. Celeriac and leek soup. Done very, very simply. Steaming it, I think, is the best way to do it. I know I've talked about roasting soups before and boiling soups, but steaming, if you want the pure essence of the ingredient that you're cooking, so for me, the celeriac in this one, steaming it is the best way to go. It's a gentle way of doing it. It may take a little bit longer. That took about 35 to 40 minutes, but you end up with a soup that tastes so much like leek. Now it's time to head to Barnbougle Golf Course with George Bailey and Richard Sattler. So we finished our round of golf. I think Richard ended up winning.
We let him.
We let him win. You got, like you said, it's his own backyard rules.
And I didn't even need to use my handicap.
My handicap, well, I was saying my handicap's golf. So I'm going to cook now because I lost, so I'm responsible for feeding these two. You've done a little bit of work here with cricket, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, we've had a great relationship with Barnbougle and Richard for many years. Some of the trips have been good, a lot of relaxing and a bit of team building stuff, and some have been fitness based and a lot of running the sand hills, and they're not so fun.
George, you reckon you like porterhouses?
Yeah, I love the flavour of the porterhouse, but working bit of meat.
It has to be Angus.
Angus.
Well played.
That's what you farm here?
Yep. I think at 4,000 or 5,000 on, so I've got to show a bit of favouritism.
What is the story behind Barnbougle? It is an amazing golf course smack bang in the middle of Angus cattle farmland. How did you decide to build a golf course?
A midlife crisis, I think. Had to do something with the coastal country that wasn't as productive as the inland, and golf was a good opportunity.
Yeah.
And the main convincing factor was it's just so similar land style to those famous Scottish-Irish courses. So that was where the real idea was to replicate that style. It's genuine, true links like probably nothing else in Australia. Yeah.
How long people have been playing golf here? How long's the course been?
The first course opened in December 2004 and this one in December 2010. So yeah, we've not quite the years that St Andrews has got, but we're getting there.
The concentration of the 18 holes, I need a T20 version of golf.
St Andrews has
About 11 holes, I reckon, and I'll be done.
All right, so they're going to go on. They're obviously very thick stacks. It's going to take a little while to get some heat through to the middle. So while they're doing their thing, I'm going to show you how I'm going to make Brussels sprouts edible. And when you think about it, a Brussels sprout is just a cabbage. What did you call them before, George?
Evil.
Evil little cabbages. So I'm going to, probably one of the things that we use cabbage for the most is like coleslaw. So slice these nice and thin. Then I'm going to slice some shallots really thin to go in there to give it some texture, some chilli for some flavour, and salt. Let that sit for 5 minutes, let that moisture come out, and then I'll use my mustard, lemon juice and creme fraiche to make my dressing. That does look pretty good.
It does.
Yeah. I reckon with porterhouses, it's about thickness of the steak.
Hot barbecue to start with?
Yeah, you need a really hot barbecue if you're going to be mucking around with steaks.
And then do you like to turn it down or keep it hot the whole...
If you can, as soon as you get that... So the only reason you need it hot is because you're after the Maillard reaction, which is that sort of caramelisy, toasty bit on the outside. And once you've got that, you can turn it down. So a lot of people will do what we call pan roast a steak. So you'll put it in a pan, you'll get that colour, and you'll take the pan and put the pan in the oven with the steak in it, so pan roasting. Because once you've got that colour, you just do want a gentle heat going all the way through the steak to set the proteins on the inside. So you only really need to get it to about 60, or not even that, 50 degrees inside, and that caramelisation on the outside, and that's what you're looking for in a good steak.
You ever had an issue of the cattle getting onto the golf course?
Once.
Really?
And I realised then that you don't chase them. You let them walk back off.
Let them finish their round.
You let them finish their round, even if they're going for a birdie when you catch them. Let them walk quietly off, because when they start running, it's a mess. Now, why do you do that, Ben? Does that cook the fat and take a bit of the flavour, the fatty flavour out?
Yeah, that line of fat that sits on the top of the porterhouse, just trying to render that out so then I can cook in that fat. A couple of pinches of salt in with the Brussels sprouts, mix that around, and the salt's just going to draw moisture out of the Brussels sprouts and bitterness out of the Brussels sprouts, so that they start to, instead of having that bitterness in the sprout itself when you're eating it, we'll then use that on the outside with the creme fraiche and the mustard to create a nice sort of bitter salad dressing. And at this point, because they are so thick and I don't have an oven I can put them in, it's a matter of turning them pretty constantly now. Now we've got that good crust on the outside, I want to turn them every 20 to 30 seconds to slowly get that heat into the middle to set those proteins, so it's not like jelly on the inside when you're eating it. And that's, actually, what am I doing? Every 20 seconds, mate, give them a turn.
No,
well, I'll have to look after the beer, George.
So what awards is the course won, Richard?
Oh dear, I'm too humble to repeat all of them, Ben. We are quite well rated worldwide and quite well known worldwide, and we pride ourselves that both courses are in the top 50 in the world in nearly every rating in the world. So we're pretty happy with that.
And people get that's just a publicly accessible course that people can just come and play. That's pretty special.
It's probably a unique model, especially for Australia. There's a few in the States and a few in the UK, but the majority of all clubs, golf courses are club membership.
Yeah.
And not easily accessible, so we like to think that everyone has equal chance.
I get in trouble for using too much salt at home, but it seems like a key ingredient.
Key ingredient, and I found in Georgia, I add the salt when the wife's not looking. And no one knows, and they'll say, the steak's beautiful tonight, and I say, I don't know what I did different.
It's got to be the right salt, though. Good sea salt.
So if I'm cooking at home, one of the hardest things I find is how you resting and keeping it at a reasonable
Yeah, we don't have heat lamps at home, do you?
No, not yet.
So normally, if your oven set at 60 degrees, just pop it in your oven, let it rest in there. You wouldn't know there was Brussels sprouts in there, would you?
Almonds and Brussels sprouts have surprised me.
Yeah, toasted almonds on anything's good. Perfectly cooked, George.
I think my mother would turn in the grave if she thought I'd eaten a raw Brussels sprout. Well, you have to admit it, that's not too bad. That is not too bad. And I just do note there was nothing there where you said, this is one I prepared earlier. This was the real show.
This is it, from start to finish in about 15 minutes. Now let's head back to Talia Haven to create another dish using celeriac. When we travelled through Portugal, we ate a lot of a thing called bacalhau, and it was normally mixed with potato and rolled into croquettes. But the bacalhau mixture itself, the salted cod with the potato and the herbs, was really, really yummy on its own. So I'm gonna use that to inspire a bit of a dip. So I'm making a cold smoked salmon and celeriac dip. I made a celeriac soup, and once the soup cools, it turns into this, which is almost like a mashed potato type mixture. And celeriac has an awesome flavour and goes really well with salmon. So this should work. I've got some cold smoked salmon here, which I want to dice. So I'll cut it into ribbons or battens and then dice. Pop that into a bowl. Then I'm going to do the same with some gherkins or cornichons. Some cornichons, grab a handful of those. I'm gonna do this similar thing. I'm just gonna chop those reasonably roughly. I want them to be nice and crunchy, so a good amount of texture. So a rough chop. My cornichons. Everything here actually, well, just about a lot of the ingredients we're using are preserves. This cold smoked salmon is preserved by the smoking component of it. The cornichons are preserved by the brine that they go in. And the pickled onions are preserved by the pickling. So this is a good one for preserving. Well, the science of preserving. So I do this the same way I would dice a normal onion, cut it in half, run a knife through that way, and back the other way. I'll add half, and I'll see how I feel after that. So that was half a large pickled onion. There was probably 6 or 7 cornichons, about 150 grams of cold smoked salmon, and now my cold celeriac soup, which is our binding agent for our dip, really. A little bit more. That's about right. So I need a little pinch of salt. And then some dill, freshen it up a little bit with some herbs. So a couple of sprigs of dill, again roughly chopped. It's a rough dip, so everything can be quite roughly chopped. Put that in. Mix. So the bacalhau, or the salted cod, is much thicker. It's cod's a big, a thick protein, thick flake sort of fish. So when you put the thick pieces of bacalhau in there, it's a lot chunkier and holds together a lot more, and that's where you can mould it and then deep fry it. but this is a dip. It's about the right consistency just there. So, oh, yum. That's fantastic. That is really, really, really good. Oh, that is so good. That on a cracker or a nice piece of sourdough, or even, to be 100% honest with you, that as a little side if I was having a piece of chicken or another piece of fish would be fantastic. And now just to serve it. Thank you. Right, so a couple of pieces of toasted sourdough. The team have done a good job there. Pop our chunky rillette in. Finish off with some dill on top. And on the east coast of Tasmania, where seafood is king, that's a nice way to end a day on holiday. A big bowl of that, some crunchy sourdough, and a glass of wine, you'd be very, very happy. And a dip in the bath. There's a bath up there. I want to jump in the bath.